Overwatch 2 PVE has been cancelled. Sort of. The internet has been an absolute smorgasbord of hate towards the Overwatch 2 team over the last few hours, from the devs to the higher-ups. The news that PVE was being gutted and stripped back to a much smaller experience has been, well, about as unpopular as you'd expect it to be. But I'm not really angry about the news. Hero missions and unlockable ability talents being removed due to how complex their development has been, or at least that was the reason given, just makes me feel disappointed. Like a massive potential opportunity has briefly flown by Overwatch 2, and sailed right on past. Essentially then, some of the biggest pulls of Overwatch 2's PvE experience, skill trees that enhanced and expanded on the skill sets of every hero, replayable hero missions to advance your heroes through their power progression, have been completely removed from Overwatch 2's content roadmap. And here's the weird thing, right? The justifications for their removal aren't necessarily bad ones in isolation. Aaron Keller said in an interview with GameSpot that the scope of the hero missions was absolutely massive. Making a standalone co-op experience to run alongside the PvP game was always a huge undertaking, as was the work involved in the skill trees. 40 to 50 talents per hero, over 35 plus heroes, that is thousands of talents. And then on top of that, you do need to make sure that you're running the live game, so content has to continually come out for that side too. This is all objectively true, but then we come to a problem. That is what Blizzard themselves promised back at BlizzCon in 2019. It was in fact used as the entire justification for Overwatch 2 in the first place. Watching that reveal from 4 years ago now just makes me feel sad. Sad that all of this PvE potential has been squandered due to consistently bad communication, from the higher-ups to the devs to the fans, and what has ultimately come down to the fact that Overwatch 2 is a live service game that needs to keep making money to stay alive. So the emphasis has to fall on supporting what already exists, not what could. And when I say this strip back of PvE was communicated badly, that is a huge understatement. The announcement itself came out of nowhere, along with a revised content roadmap for Season 5, 6 and beyond. But rather than calling it a cancellation, which it's not really, or even really acknowledging it at all, they raised hype further by mentioning PvE directly in a post just before they posted a video that highlighted everything the PvE mode was getting rid of. It was a complete failure to manage expectations, and the fact that we have been consistently promised since Overwatch 2 was announced that PvE was on the way, it makes it all the harder to swallow for everyone who was looking forward to the promised version of Overwatch 2 actually eventually launching. And the worst part is, it took the shine off the stuff we're actually getting. Despite the many doomsday posts and videos, which I suppose you could include the first half of this video in, to be fair, the mode hasn't actually been cancelled, at least not fully. We are still getting story missions that will dive into the massive amount of lore around the Overwatch universe, expanding on the stories we've come to know and love and giving us a taste of that co-op gameplay we've been waiting to enjoy. PvE is still going to be a thing, and while yes, it has been stripped back significantly, that's come with the apparent payoff that we'll be getting regular PvE events as part of seasonal releases from now on. And from what the devs have said, the story missions will be significantly bigger than any other PvE content we've had before. Far larger than the archive missions that is really our only proper recent benchmark for what to expect. It's not the end of PvE in Overwatch 2, and copium or not, we are still getting some PvE content coming to the game. But the communication, the constant promise that it's on the way, and frankly, the potential that PvE offered to delve further into Overwatch 2's lore has created a perfect storm of backlash against Overwatch 2. I'd go as far to say PvE in Overwatch 2 could go down as one of the biggest swing and a miss wastes of potential in gaming history. The chance to broaden the appeal of what is, at its base level, a live service hero shooter in a crowded market with a pretty high skill ceiling, into something that single players, or those less competitively inclined, could also enjoy. PvE, as it was promised, could have seen communities built around it. Entire groups of players focused on completing the missions the fastest, in the best way, in the weirdest ways. Now it feels more like it's an afterthought. And ultimately, are those who downloaded the game with the promise of something more than a battle pass and PvP in mind gonna stick around for the further promises of what might be to come? What is the main selling point of Overwatch 2 now that the whole justification for the sunsetting of Overwatch 1 has been so irrevocably changed from what it was originally advertised as? What was the point of all that dead time in Overwatch 1 where no new content came out for years if it wasn't to make a fully realised PvE experience? What were those 3 years spent on if not on that? These are not unfair questions, and yet, beyond the immediate reaction of players and fans obviously, it's the devs I actually feel sorry for the most. Those who've spent the last few years trying their best to make this work, to make a memorable and enjoyable PvE experience for all those players who were hyped to finally have something new and different coming to the Overwatch space, only to see huge swathes of their hard work cut down and lobbed in the bin. And really, they've just shot themselves in the foot. If anything, the stripping back of PvE is just going to place more pressure on PvP. They no longer have the excuse of having a large portion of their team committed to building a PvE experience. So players, pretty justifiably, are going to be a lot more critical when they see things going wrong in the game or things they don't like. After all that, you have to hold on to some hope that PvE can still be a good addition. More frequent content releases in line with the seasons could be a positive, keeping a nice ebb and flow of PvE content hitting the game rather than just your one-offs like archives. And Aaron Keller did concede in that GameSpot interview that PvE elements that have already been developed could see the light of day in future seasons, so all hope might not be lost yet. With that said, Keller also stated that the team working on the PvE side of the game is now essentially being absorbed into the PvP team. So clearly, the time of Overwatch 2's devs having a singular focus on PvE gameplay has truly been and gone. It will always be supplementary to the PvP experience, never the standalone, story-focused, mission-based mode that we were sold on. So no, Overwatch 2 isn't dead. PvE hasn't actually been cancelled. The live service PvP will plough on, and the story missions will land in one way or another. But potential is a hard thing to come by, and it feels like Blizzard have just left a lot of Overwatch 2s on the cutting room floor. Do you think PvE will still live up to the hype after so many years of waiting and so many changes? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you fancy a dip into the Overwatch League side of the game, check out these videos here.